I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was
our
the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you
Yes.
boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
the field in Castro's hands, and he's going immediately. Gets a good jump there over green and is pulling away. He is gapping early, even moving over to try to break up any sort of slipstream or help that inside line, making sure green has his hands full coming into T1.
Be your chance. Did Jason give Antonio just a little bit of a slow up? It doesn't look like it. Antonio down to the inside. Hopefully going to be able to make this move. Oh, that was close.
Soto both coming very hot with a head of steam. Plava going up to try to move out of the way and give up the slipstream.
Here comes Gilliland.
Slow down. Gilliland coming in, going to try to challenge for this podium. They're going to go too wide.
Oh, no!
Oh, no! Gilliland and Plava come together. Gilliland's going to come back across the line in fourth place.
Quite going to get there. There's a little bit of a lock up there from the
Oh, my
46
goodness.
car. He's gone deep.
Ooh, I don't know how everybody was able to get through that. That could have been absolute tears for that front runner.
Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to round number 7 of the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors. My name is Ron Maunz, subbing in for Randall McGrew, who's feeling a little bit under the weather today. Randall, if you're tuning into this broadcast, hoping you feel a little bit better in time for next week's broadcast, buddy. And alongside me, working the comms and the cams, is Daniel Zippy Salmon, running today at the Daytona International Speedway on the moto layout. This is a layout that you usually don't see a lot of in the world of iRacing, usually running on the plain roval that you occasionally see for an event like the Rolex 24, for instance. So you don't really see the moto layout get a whole lot of use in the world of iRacing. This is the first ever broadcast I've done of a race around this track, about 13 corners in all, an odd layout to be sure, with some sections where some drivers may end up hitting some Armco head-on. This is going to be an odd race for sure, Zippy. What are your thoughts heading into it?
Well, honestly, it's not a track layout that I'm familiar with myself. Certainly not one that I've really ever driven, and I'm looking forward to seeing the differences between this and the international layout. Certainly, it should be a lot of fun for sure. I'm very much looking forward to it, but it's going to be interesting as well. So as I have a look through, I'm expecting some interesting tactics here. So Paulo Breme, is it him? I think, no, it's Andrea Favini. Sorry, Andrea Favini. I'm expecting them to very intentionally not qualify and see how many positions they can make up through the track. But certainly a very mixed opinion field here on this track layout. As just having a little quick flick through, this is one of your new drivers here as well, James Walker, ladies and gentlemen, taking on the SRFs for a change. Obviously, we got couple of regulars in here as well. Kane Lasky, he's making another appearance as well. Simon Mayer, hopefully a little bit wiser after trying to go 3 wide with Tom Gradwell last week. But it's going to be interesting to see how this field plays out. And also as well, we got Trenton Kramer. Hopefully he's back as well. No PC issues for him this time round is the best we can hope for him at this point. We should probably do points.
Just iRacing issues, period. iRacing issues, period, can usually be the detriment to an iRacer. let's take a quick look at the championship points, considering we're still at the top of the show. Marco Panera has been absolutely dominant thus far this season. You can see the major gap that he has in the championship. That'd be 150 points between himself and Jason Green. Absolutely dominant is the Italian. He's off the back of a victory 1 week ago at the Nürburgring. Looking to try and continue that dominance here at Daytona. Jason Green, as I just mentioned, right behind him, P2. Bobby West in third, Daniel Wood in fourth, and Yanxi Lin running at the top 5 in the Spec 1 category. Moving on to Spec 2 now. This has been another similar story. SMB's very own Josh Wilkie, once again impressing here. He's been very impressive thus far in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. The Spec Racer Ford being no different. Got a pretty big gap to himself and Paolo Brema in P2. That's, trying to do the math in my head, 124 points between those two. Please, public school math.
Now that looks good to me, Ron. That's good math.
He's off the back of a victory 1 week ago at the Nürburgring, so Wilkie's been pretty fast in this series. Paul Jackson, Andrew Love, and Michelle Viglini running at your top 5. People with lists really hate saying the name, but Michelle's always been pretty fast in this series. Moving on to the Masters category now, a little bit closer with 2 Australians at the front. Tom Bradwell in the 909 car and Brad Cathcart in the 905 car. Those 2 cars a little bit closer with only 56 points between them. However, unlike some of the stuff that we've seen in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, a little bit more spread out when it comes to the championship fights in this series. Adam Bradshaw, Jim Brewster, and Kurt Nunez running at the top 5 in the Masters standings. Antonio Reese and Jorg mining a little bit farther in the back. Those two have not had some good seasons up to this point. Jorg not going to be in attendance with us today. Antonio Reese not having a fantastic season either, but those two out of the championship fight, so it's really on in the Masters, and it looking like Bradwell's in a pretty good position. Heading into the 7th race of this Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warrior season, and to do it, we're running at a track, as I mentioned in my open, a very odd one for sure, and I think while we're still in the midst of this qualifying session, Zippy, we may do an onboard lap just to savor in the pure, unbridled strangeness of the configuration we're running today.
Absolutely, I'm just trying to pick up the best car for the job, and we're going to go with the Cookie Monster machine of Phil Berry. Ron, do the honors, sir.
Alrighty, here we go. 1 lap around Daytona International Speedway can either be 2 minutes or about 25 seconds, depending on what you're running in it. But here in these Spec Racer Fords, heading down into turn number 1, a good overtaking opportunity. Having to deal with a bumps on entry and a bump on exit. I've seen a driver flip it, hitting a bump in the grass coming out of that corner. May not see that in this race, may see it in this race. We'll just have to wait and see. Heading down into the horseshoe of turn number 4 and going for a spin. Jason Green, nice evasive action. For him to avoid that. Kane Lasky nearly hitting him. So that's a little bit of a detour. Anyways, we're going to act like that didn't happen. Riding on board with Kane Lasky coming out of turn number 4, which as we just saw a couple of moments ago is a very tricky corner. This is an odd one as well. Turn number 5 and turn number 6 back to back. We nearly had back-to-back spins there. Lasky mega sideways. No, please do not. Okay, thank God. I was about to say, if he toes back to the pits, I'm going to bash my head against the wall. But we're riding on board now with,
Daniel Wood.
Who are we riding on board with? Daniel Wood. Riding on board with Daniel Wood. That was turn number 5 and 6 that we saw Lasky go through. 7 and 8. Now this odd section, now heading through the campgrounds here at Daytona International Speedway. Now back going onto the oval, onto the super stretch, as they used to call it. This long, wide, and expansive backstretch runoff area, pretty much entirely paved now. This scan not entirely up to date. All this grass that you see heading through the bus stop chicane, or I guess the Le Mans chicane now. The Le Mans chicane just doesn't have the same ring to it. Pretty much all of that is now asphalt in real life, but in the sim, still got a little bit of grass to deal with. Now you're back up onto the banking through turn number 13. I've covered some Spec Racer Ford races around this racetrack in the past, and that chicane was usually the big trouble spot. You want to get a good exit coming out of there, because if you don't, you're going to be a sitting duck heading through the final, basically oval 3 and 4, the final corner on this Roval layout before you hit the start-finish straightaway in 3, 2, 1. That's a lap riding on board with Daniel Wood. It took us a few more attempts to try and find a driver who was actually successful in their attempt at a lap last time by, but this track is just so mysterious, so odd. I can't even tell you what we should expect into this race, outside the fact that that bus stop chicane, or Le Mans chicane, I'm not even going to bother calling it Le Mans chicane, the bus stop chicane towards the end of the lap, going to be so important for these drivers, especially on the final laps of the race.
Absolutely, and it certainly is definitely an interesting layout indeed, Ron. I want to give Jan Janchik a huge shout out as well for helping me get that audio fixed. Certainly something, there's so many moving pieces involved in that, ladies and gentlemen, and I always appreciate you as viewers helping me rectify that. I did have a feeling he was a little bit quiet, and it's fair to say we are now all calibrated, so thank you very much for your help there, Jan. And it's going to be his debut season here as well, or debut season, debut race even. Let's actually take a quick look at him if he's out on the track. Now, I believe his paint is that of the Motor Racing Academy. Let me just find him here in this order. Jan, you're currently not out on the track. You're hanging out in the pits, but it's going to be his debut race here. So certainly good to have him here on board, and we'll have to see how well it ends up working out for him, if that training academy is really going to pay off. Thanks for tuning in, Jan.
Always nice to see a newcomer in this series. Jan Janchik, currently qualified in 15th as it stands at the moment at 154.535, so we'll see if he does hit the racetrack again in the dying stages of this qualifying session to improve on his lap time. Speaking of, about 3 minutes left to go here, going to 3 minutes left on the 20-minute long clock now, so these drivers setting up what are going to be their final few laps in this qualifying session. It's so odd looking at that run between turn 4 and 5, seeing them on the left-hand side and heading through 5. We saw that with last game, we see it now running on board. That was a big moment there a couple of moments ago. That's Favini in the 27 car looping it around. Turn number 5, I think, is maybe going to be the biggest trouble spot around this racetrack. It just looks so tough trying to go through that corner with any sort of success.
I gotta admit, Ron, I don't even know which way he was going at that point. I'm completely lost here with this different layout, but certainly this is a driver who I'm expecting not to make a lap, so I'm very surprised to see him out mixing it up. But currently your race leader, well, I say race leader pole sitter, is Bobby West. He's sat in the front row. Marco Pinero relegated to second position right now with James Walker. He's up doing things very well, and that looks like he's waiting to potentially get a tow off Trenton Kramer, who's currently sat just behind him. We'll have to see how this works out. Maybe a little bit of buddying up going on here, or maybe just a little bit of a cluster on the track.
Well, I think we're going to see a cluster heading down into turn number 1, especially at the beginning of this race. These drivers want to try and get some moves done. We'll just have to wait and see how things go. Riding on board with Trenton Kramer in the number 20, following the 96 of Walker right in front of him. That's all through turn number 4. Going to see if we have another spinner all through turn number 5. This corner is just so incredibly difficult. It's such an odd track to navigate as well, because, I mean, many people have done laps around the Daytona International Speedway road course. Don't usually see drivers running around this layout, though, so everyone's references are entirely inaccurate. You're heading into this section here. This is turn number 7. This is such a tighter corner compared to the horseshoe that we usually see. That's Walker going off the circuit. But looking at this section here is just so tough. You're running on sections of racetrack that probably haven't been used since about 1999. Ooh, and Walker hitting a jump on corner exit.
I can describe
into the wall.
It looked like Trenton Kramer did indeed go down to the rodeo of the bucking Bronco Spec Racer Ford. That's the kind of move I would expect to see maybe even Tim Cox doing if he was there visiting our good friend Adam Thompson. Certainly, I do wonder if Stevie is going to get the full line dancing experience, but I got to admit, I'm a little bit jealous, Ron. I'd love to go see Stevie and Adam. Oh, it looks like
that would be a shindig and a half for sure. And I like the point that he brought up there. A bucking Bronco reminds me of a friend that I had in middle school. His name was Franco. However, because of a misspeak, he got expelled from school. Looking now at Jason Green, who's currently qualified in the 10th position right now to 153.765. Oh boy, we're expecting some very odd things here on the air. I mean, I'm usually on Formula Fords, not Spec Racer Fords, so I guess I can say some very odd things while we're on the air, as long as I don't get booted for it.
Yeah, you're good, buddy. Keep going.
It's checkered flag out in this qualifying session. These drivers on their final laps. Gotta say, Bobby West always a pretty big force to be reckoned with in the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors races. And I'm thinking now, a couple of seasons ago, those who've tuned into the Weekend Warriors world for a couple seasons may remember a couple of seasons ago for the runoffs at the end of Season 2 for 2024. there was a little bit of a scuffle between Jason Green and Bobby West towards the end of that race at this very racetrack as well. They were battling for the win, didn't really work out. Instead, Megan Overstreet, who I don't believe we've seen thus far this season, I haven't seen a whole lot of her over the past few weeks, but it's a big shame indeed. Megan, I believe a previous champion in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, always a staple in the Weekend Warriors world. Would be really nice to see her back out on the track at some point in the not-too-distant future. But nevertheless, Bobby West and Jason Green kind of got into it a little bit. They were fast then, but on this different configuration, a little bit more spread out. Green currently at a 153.7 compared to Bobby West at a 152.002. Only 0.02 of a second he would have to shave to go into the 151 barrier. That may be a little bit frustrating to him, but still, looks like he's going to be on the provisional pole unless Green has anything to say about enjoying the drift off the back of Walker's number 96 car. Is it an improvement from him? Yes, it is an improvement, a big improvement in the process to go up to 6th.
Well, definitely, that's exactly what I expected to happen for Jason Green. That draft ahead of him, very, very beneficial. I do see Josh Wilkie is going to be sitting this one out. He's feeling a bit sore from that S2 victory over in the Formula Ford. Josh, if you do want to come in and hang out, if you just want to chill, by all means, you know the door's open. By all means, step in. I don't mind, buddy. It's up to you. But regardless, I hope you're feeling a little bit more back to your usual self very, very shortly. As I think that is that one of the last cars on track. We may indeed be clear, huh?
Yeah, I think coming to the end of this qualifying session, just rounding out the clock as it stands at the moment. I think there's only 2 more left out there on the racetrack in the form of James Walker and Phil Berry out there on the circuit. There's Walker heading through turn number 7 and 8. Gotta say, you see it in 7 and 8. You also see it in 5 and 6 as well. Those back and forth left and right sections, which have not a whole lot of flow to them at all. I heard some mixtapes back in my high school days that had very similar flow to certain parts of this section. It's a racetrack that doesn't get a whole lot of use. Some of the sections of this racetrack just don't really get any use at all in the world of iRacing. So these drivers trying to grapple with the challenge that is definitely going to befall them here at Daytona for round number 7 of this season. But before we get into the race, let's take a look at the starting grid. Bobby West going to be starting out on pole. Marco Pinero going to join him on the front row. Pinero been dominant thus far in this season. However, he's going to face a whole lot of challenge from West. James Walker going to be starting in 3rd. Phil Berry grabbing the Spec 2 pole, going to be starting in P4 overall. Kurt Nunez in 5th, starting from the Masters pole, P5 overall. Not James Berry, my apologies. That's a driver in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. Jason Green, meanwhile, is a driver in the Spec Racer 4th, and he's going to be starting this race in 6th. Daniel Wood in 7th. Kane Lasky in P8. Simon Mayer, the German behind the wheel, the number 5 car, going to be starting this race in 9th. Adam Bradshaw in 10th. Tom Gradwell in 11th. Jan Janschik in P number 12. Looking through the rest of the field, we got Ryan Walker, the Scotsman, in the 88 car. Trent Kramer in 14th. Paolo Brema in 15th. Andrew Love in 16th. Brad Cathcart in 17th. Joshua Flores in P18. Paul Jackson in 19th. Wayne Buttermore in 20th. Jason Greider in 21st. Andre Favini, not saying a qualifying time, in 22nd. Alice Bleva, not saying a qualifying time, in 23rd. And our SMB colleague Joshua Wilkie, going to be classed in 24th, not saying a qualifying time. Neither is Russell Telker, who's going to be starting this race in 25th. Looks like Wilkie is not going to be taking the start, as he just mentioned a couple of moments ago there, Zippy. So maybe trying to carry the weight of the cojones for him to be as fast of a driver as he is in this series. But nevertheless, ooh, boy, I think at this point in time, we're going to a small little break. There's a calm before the storm, to say the very least. And I'll ask you a somewhat loaded question, Zippy. You know, you've been on this series throughout the entirety of the season, with the exception of the first round where our SMB colleague Adam Thompson was on the call with me for that one. But you've been on for most of these. What do you think is a driver that you think is going to be the most exciting to follow throughout the 40 minutes of racing action we have coming up?
I think if it was me, I would definitely be backing off in some of these corners where you're throwing the weight of the car around so much, and I think that's why we're seeing these spins happen. Because you're literally, it's almost like a pendulum effect. Now, the best way I can explain this is if you have like a bucket of water in front of you and you slosh it from side to side, that's not to say that the Spec Racer Ford drives like a bathtub, despite having some visually cosmetic resemblance at times, don't get me wrong. I love the Spec Racer Ford. It's literally my dream race car to drive. I want to do that, but I think the biggest thing for me in this is going to be the survival. And I love racing as close as possible. We see these guys, certainly in the last race, as they'd gone out of Canada Corner, well, sorry, heading into Canada Corner, they would leave like a full car with gap in the middle between them in a fight. I'm very much the opposite. I will force my car and force you to have the smallest space possible. But at this track, I don't know if I'd want to play that tactic. I think I would be going on the safer side. And for me, the attrition is going to be a big part of it. I think a lot of the fun as well is going to be having those draft battles going around the bank section.
I think the banked battles, especially towards the end of this race, are going to be fantastic. May have a photo finish, but nevertheless, we got to wait 40 minutes for that. Meanwhile, the green flag's down. The drivers are on their way. Bobby West getting off to a flyer. He's going to be leading, heading down into turn number 1. Looking at Walker getting a move done. And Pinero dropping back. He's now in 4th. A rough start for him. The driver who enters this race with a comfortable championship lead, not getting off to a good start at all here at Daytona. Maybe taking a little bit easy. Maybe hinging on the bet that some of these drivers may end up in the barriers, considering the trouble that some of them encountered in the qualifying session earlier. But looking now, Jason Green has gone off to a pretty good start. He's already made up one spot. Some drivers shuffling a little bit farther in the back. Paolo Brema possibly running into some difficulties as he's careened his way down the running order. Heading off now into 5 and 6 for the first time by Jan Janšík, nearly running into the back of Kurt Nunes, heading down into the braking zone for turn 5. That was near disaster with those two running in 7th and 8th as it stands at the moment. Janšík, a Spec 2 driver. Nunes, the leader in Masters as it stands at this very early stage of this race with only 1 minute on the clock. Nunes has a pretty big cushion in that Masters category. You have to go all the way back to Bradshaw in 12th to find the next driver in that Masters category. But heading on to the back straight away for the first time in this 40-minute long race, it's West followed by Walker, followed by Pinero as he gets a move done on Phil Berry to slip his way up into 3rd.
Well, it's fair to see Phil Berry, not knocking the guy, but I'm impressed to see him so high up in the order. He's an S2 and is currently in 4th place overall, so that's absolutely fantastic stuff from the Cookie Monster machine. And I gotta say, what an absolutely incredible beard. I know certainly if we're short of a Santa Claus this year, you will be given the position if you so as desire. But look at James Walker, he's right on the back of Bobby Ross. Now, this is where it's going to be some interesting tactics. You know, are these guys going to work together, try and bump draft and open up the gap between themselves and Pinero? Because you can see right now there is already a lead pack emerging. As you have a look back, Kane Lasky leads the second pack with Jason Green hot. And so Kurt Nunes, he's currently leading the Masters and got a first debut win last time round. So certainly good things to come from him. Oh, Jan Janšík going very deep there.
Oh, you can see the smoke going up in the air. Those drivers trying to get the Spec Racer Ford's cars woed up into turn number 1. Turning, dealing with bumps. It's so tricky to get these cars. Ooh, and nearly running into the back. He did run into the back of Kurt Nunes, nearly causing a major accident. Right as I said that, so tricky to get these cars slowed down. He runs into that exact same problem off into turn number 4. That's going to be something we see a lot of throughout this race, and you can see Janšík again. From what I've seen thus far, the driver of the 445 car, aggressive on the brakes possibly, maybe too aggressive on the brakes at times. Either way, he's already run into the back of Nunes, who's still leading in the Masters category. Nunes avoiding a disaster and possibly losing out on the Masters lead if that contact with himself and Jan Janšík was a little bit heavier, but nevertheless, talking about the issues that these drivers are going to have just getting these cars wound up, especially heading down into turn number 1. I feel like the same problems will befall the drivers in turn number 5, but you also got that mind game thing as well. These drivers, of course, had 1 hour of practice and a 20-minute long qualifying session to try and get their bearings straight. But as you pointed out, Zippy, just from your perspective as a producer and my co-commentator for this broadcast, it's so odd seeing these drivers have to hit the brakes and turn right heading into turn number 5 around this roval.
Well, as I take a quick look here at Andrea Favini, he's doing exactly what I figured he would do and trying to go for a hard charger up through the positions. But it's fair to say the drivers around him, it looks like he's got, if I'm not mistaken, that's Joshua Flores alongside. And let's use that in the 518. 518 is Josh Flores. And that must be Brad Cathcart then. Yeah, Brad Cathcart is alongside. So these guys potentially going 3 wide as they head down towards the start-finish line. Favini choosing not to get involved in that. And I honestly think that is part of the battle, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes you will do better to surrender a position on track and potentially fall back in single file. We've seen it here over and over again, ladies and gentlemen. The Weekend Warriors, as who's that now? The number 20 car taking a scenic route. Trenton Kramer has crashed, Ron.
Yeah, Trenton Kramer is going off the circuit. I think he has rejoined. Got to take a look at a replay to see what exactly is going on with Trenton Kramer in that number 20 car. You can see a little bit of damage on the front of the 28, I believe it was, right behind him. This section is so tricky. As we mentioned just one lap ago, dropping the anchors and getting these cars woed up into this corner, especially when you're nose to tail with some of your competitors who may just take an entirely different approach into the corner. So hard, but Kramer, you could see him sideways during it, mega sideways, slideways, and he goes off the circuit. A little bit of an overcorrect that sends him off into the grass on the outskirts of the corner. Thankfully for him, he doesn't hit the barrier or hit that bump on the outside line. I believe it was Paul Jackson a couple of seasons ago during those runoffs. Hit a bump in the grass out there, and he sent himself into low Earth orbit. It was a major collision. It looks like Kramer going to be avoiding that at this point. Running into some difficulties, though. That turn one is so difficult. You got to deal with heavy braking. You got to deal with bumps as well. But Kramer's still out there on the circuit, currently running in 18th as it stands at the moment. Right behind a pack involving Favini and Flores. Favini already a hard charger, up 6 spots from where he started in this race. Well done to the Swede.
Oh, he definitely does not disappoint when it comes to racing action. You can see it looks like Kramer is actually trying to give him a shove. Now, the biggest thing you got to remember here, Ron, is do not push the pusher. And certainly these guys are pushing very hard. Great view of the back. And yeah, that was definitely a lift then, Ron. He's definitely lifting. I don't think he's going for the buff. Oh, no, there it is. Giving him a little bit of a push as they push past Andrea Favini. Now, what is Favini going to do here? Kramer's got to remember he does need to back off. And another thing to keep in mind as well is that slipstream will affect the braking as they're going free wide.
Favini!
Oh, incredible action.
Oh, and you can see Flores running a little bit wide on corner exit. That's going to allow Favini to get by the both of them. So well done to Andre Favini in that number 27 car, keeping calm and trying to get that move done, and he does it so successfully. Looks like Bremen now involved in that fight, trading blows with Kramer. Now looking at a fight involving Phil Berry. He's in the midst of a sandwich with himself, Green, and Lasky. Look at Kurt Nunez, the Masters leader, running 7th at the moment. He's still in the midst of this as well. So the driver of the 918 car not losing touch with the Spec 1 and Spec 2 racers in front. That's one thing that people who are tuning into the series for the first time need to realize with the Weekend Warriors world. Despite the fact that these Masters drivers are a little, I was going to say something mean, a little bit up there in the years. Despite the fact their biological age may be a little bit higher than some of their competitors, they can still wheel it around like they're an 18-year-old with some vinegar in their veins, looking to try and get some moves done on drivers half their age. But these drivers in the Masters category, it's one of the best classes to take a look at, in my opinion, just because you can see these drivers. They may, biologically speaking, be old, but they are youngsters out there on the racetrack, and they're going to drive like youngsters as well, wheeling these cars around the racetrack like it's going to have style.
Well, Ron, I am going to take that shovel off you there, sir. Now, I know that you've definitely got a little bit of racing pedigree in you, and it's fair to say that these guys, with age comes wisdom, Ron, and these guys, they are definitely a little bit more seasoned, and you know what? I think they are better race drivers as a result. All right, the reflexes may not be as good as you see Jason Green there making a move, and it looks like further up as well. We've got a battle going on for the lead. Yeah, Marco Pinero and James Walker going at it. Bobby West able to hold on to the front, but for how long, ladies and gentlemen? He's certainly going to want to be trying to work as hard as he can. But again, I think I would not want to be leading these races. Honestly, I would be trying to save as much fuel behind. As you see, there really is 2 packs right now. Trying to get a little bit further out. There we go. Jason Green, he's just about hanging on to that lead pack. Kane Lasky's right behind him. Philip Berry in tow and Kurt Nunez. And then you've got Simon Mayer in it. But then there's quite a gap there. And you get back to Adam Bradshaw, who's currently under attack from Daniel Wood. That's who that damage on the front of his car, courtesy of Yan Cheek. That's not really anywhere he could go. As I see Ryan Walker has had an incident. Let's have a quick look at that, Ron.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. Many opportunities to go off the circuit, but it looks like Ryan Walker has found one in the 88 car. The Scotsman looking to try and put on a defensive masterclass, putting a little bit of a block on Andrew Lovehang down into the corner, carrying a whole lot of speed off into turn number 1. That sends him off the circuit, off into the runoff area on the outskirts of the corner, and nearly coming to blows with the driver of the 555 car. That was a close call with himself and Paolo Brema, the Italian. Very lucky to get away with one there. The same can be said about Walker, the Scotsman in the 88 car. Very close to near disaster heading into the corner, but it looks like with a little bit of a flat spot on those tires and maybe a slightly dented ego, he's still been able to rejoin the racetrack without any further incidents.
Well, definitely, it could have been a lot worse. So apologies there. Something broke, but we will get to it, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see here, the battle at the lead is still very much into. And there you go, Jason Green. He's managed to catch up. He's brought Kane Lasky with him. So we've now gone from a 3-way fight to a 5-way fight. It's Jason Green and Kane Lasky making moves up on the outside.
Here we go, Green and Lasky working together as a dynamic duo and getting it done to slip their way up into first and second. Green setting the fastest lap of the race in the process, and Lasky setting his best lap of the race in the process. So it looks like Green and Lasky have decided to kick on the afterburner and jump in front. The big thing with these Spec Racer Ford races, where fuel strategy can play a huge role in how these races go, is the matter of patience. Some of these drivers may be a bit more patient than the others. Looks like Green and Lasky weren't patient compared to their competitors as they decide to gun it and got some moves done. They're currently up 5 and 6 spots in this race respectively, so those two putting on a pretty good drive now in command of this race.
Well, definitely patience is the name of the game. Certainly, it's something that I could learn to be a little bit better at. Certainly, not just in the sim, but in real life driving as well. I'm not saying I get road rage, ladies and gentlemen. I just have a low tolerance for stupidity, which is very hypocritical because it's fair to say I am not the brightest bulb in the box. But look at it right now. Such a reversal of roles as Jason Green. He's taken to the front, Kane Lasky behind, and I do believe they're pulling away very, very slightly from Bobby West and co. So interesting to see how that's going to develop, this lead battle. Now 5-6 cars potentially involved, maybe even as far back as Simon Mayer as well. Yeah, Simon Mayer's involved, so an 8-way battle for the lead right now, ladies and gentlemen.
This is absolutely nuts. All of these drivers are fantastic in this series. Green is a previous winner. Lasky, I'm not sure if he has won thus far this season. I've usually been more preoccupied with the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. Certainly showing winning pace at this point as he's now taking the lead over Jason Green. Bobby West, though, he's a previous race winner. Walker is fast. Panera, the championship leader, off the back of a victory just 1 week ago. You also got Phil Berry, Simon Mayer. They have won in the past in this series as well. Paolo Brema coming down into the pits, so the driver of the 555 car making an interesting call for him. Not sure what he's cooking there at the moment. I think Kurt Nunez has also lost out on a little bit of time as of late, but so far this race has been, I wouldn't say procedural, as we've still had some pretty good racing and some incidents to note as well, but considering we're running at such an unknown quantity of a racetrack, I was expecting a little bit more drama from this series, certainly not discrediting the talent that is obvious whenever you tune into these races, but these drivers exercising a whole lot of patience when it comes to not just their competitors, but the racetrack as well. Really, the only mistakes that we've seen have been into turn number 1, which even though we're running on the moto layout, it's still the exact same layout it's still the exact same turn 1 that we have on the normal road course layout here. So looks like despite the fact that this track is not in the comfort zones of any of these drivers, it seems like the corners where they are comfortable are the ones that they are making the mistakes on. So a little bit surprising considering the nature of this racetrack.
Well, certainly we've seen a couple of battles going on throughout the field, and I am very deliberately trying not to just focus on the leaders, ladies and gentlemen, because let's be real, there is more to, well, I'd say there's more than just winning the race. You want to win the race, but there is battles happening throughout the field. And not to give the newcomer too much attention, but Yan Cheek, he's currently having a little bit of a battle there with Brad Cathcart. So the seasoned veteran, the master himself in the 905 machine, currently under attack from one of the newcomers. Joshua Flores, he's about 3 seconds behind him. So we're going to see how this turns out. Now, it's interesting as well to see Yan Cheek here, because he is one of the people who's been taking part in the Motor Racing Academy. Now, it's shameless plug, but if you don't know about that is actually organized and ran by Suelio Almeida, who literally just won the North America Pro 1340 Championship. And I strongly suggest you go and watch that last video he posted up. Absolutely amazing. Facing adversity and sheer challenges that are at the point of, I wouldn't even say it was ethical racing. It was not the most sportsmanlike of moves, and he still won. So certainly a big fan over here, as it looks like Cathcart has gone and ducked in the pits, as has Daniel Wood.
So some drivers making the early call to come into the pits, even earlier than what we saw in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors earlier on this afternoon at Road America. If you didn't catch that action here on SMB, You should probably hit the subscribe button, because if you do, you probably will not miss out on the action with that series, which is also incredible. But some drivers making an early call to come into the pits, Daniel Wood being one of them, stopping and going. There we go. He's now on pit exit. And this is something that we haven't really mentioned thus far, Zippy. The pit exit can be really tough around this racetrack as well. We've seen some drivers have mistakes like that in the past. And also should be known that unlike the normal 24 hours of Daytona road course configuration that we have in iRacing, where the pit lane speed line runs all the way up through that small little chicane on the inside of the racetrack, the end of the pit lane speed limiter is quite early on, so those drivers going to be hauling the mail, heading off down into the inside of turn number 1 to continue on that pit exit. So that might be a big factor come time for that pit lane trip that these drivers have to make between now and the end of the race.
Well, certainly, it's definitely very easy to get caught speeding in the pits. It looks like Andrea Favini is currently under attack from Trenton Kramer. This is a battle for P7 in the S1 Championship. You can see the Masters really having a good day today. 8th, 9th, and 10th, respectively, right now. Phil Berry, he's currently up absolutely like going solo. As you see there, it's going to be a battle of side by side. Kramer's up on the inside as it stands right now, but is that going to be the place to be as they head down into turn 1? I do wonder, can Favini answer back? Certainly that draft, yeah, it's very, very apparent, and yeah, already alongside, ladies and gentlemen. So you've really got to time these passes. We're going to see some very interesting tactics with where that start finishes. You know, you got to time that pass. That's Tom Gradwell just ahead of him as well. So Favini is back in front as they head down into turn 1. Trenton Kramer is going to have to be very hard on the brakes indeed, and very much giving Favini something to work for, but I believe they are indeed catching up to the masters of Tom Gradwell.
Yeah, they're slowly reeling them in. The real question is, will they be able to reel them in between now and the end of this race? That is left to be determined. Catching up, though, is one thing. Passing is an entirely different game, so we'll have to see how those drivers decide to play between now and the end of this race. One driver that's put on a whole lot of passes is Kane Lasky. He's still in the lead. These drivers, though, Bobby West, Walker, and Panero, they've all lost out on some spots since the start of the race. Lasky currently second in the hard charger battle at this point. He's made up 7 spots compared to Andre Favini's 11, and Favini could still improve. Lasky at this point, the highest he can go is up 7. So, I mean, he's still leading this race. At the end of the day, if he doesn't take the hard charger award, I'm sure he'd still be pretty happy with a race victory here in this series. Riding on board with Marco Panero's, not a good start for him. Ended up dropping down to 4th by the time the field went through turn number 1 at the very beginning of the race. Panero, though, slowly on the up and up, and he's still in the midst of this pack with himself, Walker, West, Green, and Lasky. So he's certainly not out of contention for sure, and considering that Green and Lasky are battling right in front, continuing that game of leapfrog between the two of them, Panero is not out of the realm of possibilities that he could still win this race. I mean, he's won thus far this season, enters as the dominant championship leader, so I'm sure he doesn't really feel like he has nothing to lose. But at the same time, if he finishes 5th, no harm, no foul, really.
I actually reckon he's currently trying to save as much fuel as he can. You can hear him absolutely coasting the stuffing out of that car. That was a full dipped clutch, saving fuel. I think right now he's in 5th because he is literally choosing to be in 5th there on. I think he is, for lack of better words, sandbagging the stuffing out of this car right now and hoping to beat them in the pits, because at the end of the day, while they're in this big draft train, it's great news for them. They're going to be saving fuel unless you're at the front of the train. So Jason Green right now, he's been put back at the front. Kane Lasky and him having a little bit of a battle further up. But certainly, I think the pit strategy is going to be a crucial part of how this race develops.
Zippy, if I had $1, I would put it in my wallet. But at this point in time, these drivers still battling as
Are
hard
you even
as they
old enough to
possibly
bet,
can.
Ron?
Well, yeah. I guess
state.
here in the U.S. it is. I'm not sure if sports betting is actually allowed in the state of Pennsylvania. And, of course, here at SMB, we do not condone or support the act of sports betting or are endorsed by any sort of sports betting websites. But nevertheless, looking at these drivers battling hard. Oh boy, we are coming up slowly but surely to the halfway mark of this race. We've already seen a couple drivers come down pit lane. Not a whole lot of drama though. Jason Greider, I believe, is the only driver who's run into any sort of difficulties thus far. He's in the pits, running 22nd as it stands at the moment. But looking at a replay of Adam Bradshaw running into some difficulties in the 929 car, heading his way through 5 and 6 at this point. Let's see what happened heading down into turn number 7, which is such a hard corner to try and get right.
Oh, that's interesting. A little bit of a courtesy flick.
Yeah, I think just trying to show off a little bit of style throughout this race. I mean, he's still running at a good position. I think at the moment, unless something has changed, he was running P2 in the Masters category earlier on. Still is running P2 in the Masters category at this point. Locked steady in a close fight between himself and Trent Kramer. Side by side, hang through the tri-oval. Look like Kramer going to get that move done as it stands at the moment. Nearly side by side, hang down into turn number 1. Meanwhile, a little bit farther behind them, Jan Janchik has come into the pits along with Walker in the 88 car. So Walker, one of the first drivers that we've seen involved in some of the fights up towards the front, making a call to come into the pits. Now the fight between wide. Kramer and Bradshaw. Kramer running wide through turn number 4. That's going to be the opportunity that Bradshaw seizes to break his way back up into the top 10. And look at Andre Favini lurking around them. He's already made up 11 spots, maybe tantalizing the opportunity of making up 2 more.
Well, one thing I do want to note very quickly while we have our eyes on Andrea Favini, I gotta admit, I really like the finish on his paint. It's almost like, it's not like a marble texture per se, but I don't know if you could describe it better, Ron. I'm kind of lost for words at this point, but I like the texture, I'd say, on the paint job with the number 27 machine.
Oh boy, really testing out my my art skills, which were practically non-existent whenever I was in school.
You and me both, Ron.
I mean, Favini's cars always tend to stick out a little bit. Not in a bad way, mind you. His cars always look pretty cool as far as I'm concerned. I'll have to get a better review to see exactly how I would judge his livery. I feel like by the end of the season, we need to have like a best livery award given out to the drivers. Either a very goofy and creative one, or maybe one that just looks the most awesome in these races. Gotta say, lots of great looking paint schemes all throughout this. That's a Cookie Monster machine of Philip Berry, and looking at the, I guess that is a Rothman's tribute to Trent on a Trent Kramer's race car, the number 20. He's now going side by side at the moment with himself and Bradshaw. And look at Favini getting in the midst of that fight as well. They're going to be side by side, hanging through the tri-oval off into turn number 1. Favini looking to try and get the 2-for-1 deal on that flat out blast, and he gets it done.
Well, that's definitely a big part of how we're going to see this battle go throughout, ladies and gentlemen. Certainly something to keep in mind as well. These guys have been going hard at it for a while. Let's take a quick look, see what's happening with Phil Berry, because by my timing recollection, he's under attack. Yeah, and he is indeed from Simon Mayer. So attacks going on there. Marco Panero, on the other hand, he's managing to hold on to that lead pack. As we have a look from his car, you can see these guys all beautifully lined up.
Yeah, you can see that train of race cars at this point. Man, this fight is looking like it's still going to be hot between these drivers. Now I'm curious, considering that we are over the halfway mark at this point, Zippy, how's it going to work in terms of pit stops? We saw in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors race earlier on this afternoon here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, how the front 3 all came down pit lane at pretty much complete opposite times. Some of them were separated by quite a long ways. So at this point in time, I'm curious as to whether or not these drivers are going to go for some completely split and off-the-wall strategies, or whether they're going to come in as a group, already dealing with a little bit of lap traffic. Saw that as they came out of turn number 9 not terribly long ago, back onto the high banks now. Lasky leading over Green, leading over West, leading over Walker, and Panero is going to run at your top 5 as it stands at the moment. Looking a little bit farther in the back, I say Mayer slowly losing touch with these drivers. Can't even see him there. There's Mayer. He's now got a fight on his hands with himself and Phil Berry. Looking like a little bit of bump drafting between these two, going back onto the oval. And as I bring out the pit stops, Panero coming in with a big lockup down onto pit entry. I don't have a good feeling about that, Zippy. I'm going to take a look at iRacing to see if something came awry as a result of that. Then it looks like he's going to get away without any sort of penalty. But Panero the first to come into the pits, which is a little bit surprising considering we thought he was doing a little bit of fuel saving.
Well, don't get me wrong, you know, you can fuel save, but then if you're going to fuel save, you think you'd stay out even longer and basically, you know, get the biggest return on the investment of that draft. But very surprisingly, taking that early pit, I got to admit, that surprised me too. I think Joshua Flores is also in the pits as well. There you go.
And there is Flores in that 518 car. He stops in his box, currently running in the 15th position as it stands at the moment. 5th of the Spec 2 drivers. Flores spending a little bit of time down in pit lane at the moment. All these drivers have to, at one point in time in this race, make that run into pit lane. There's Flores now out and away. Let's see how things shake out with him compared to all the drivers around the racetrack currently. Another big thing to mention with these Spec Racer 4 drivers, they don't have a pit lane speed limiter button, so that can be a big factor in deciding how these drivers do. Now hitting that pit lane speed limit line a little bit farther back there. It's a point that I raised not terribly long ago on this broadcast about the fact that these drivers are really hauling the mail heading off into turn number 4. And if we have some battles with a driver left out there on the racetrack and one coming out of pit lane, that horseshoe, turn number 4, that is going to be a good spot to look at.
Oh, as you say that, I've just got a warning for another crash for Jan Janseek. Let's take a quick look and see exactly what happened here. Definitely not been the best race for him, and that looks like Tom Gradwell. 905, Tom Gradwell? Nope, wrong one. My apologies. Let's find out what exactly happened to Jan. You see there, he's going around turn 1. Oh, dips a wheel. Ooh. Round he goes. Ooh. Very easily done, using all of the track limits, and sadly a little bit beyond as well.
And you could see a little bit of a hop, skip, and a jump. Was that Brad Cathcart right in front of him or Tom Gradwell? I think it may have possibly been Cathcart that was right in front of him. I saw a little bit of air there, to be sure. But right now, Bobby West coming into the pit lane along with Walker. So 2 more of the drivers running in that top 5 fight have now made that decision to come into the pit, shadowing off the move that we saw from Pinero not terribly long ago.
Ooh,
Where
Walker's
is Pinero and how is he
pits.
going to shake out? Oh, yeah, you can see Walker's being Bobby West out of pit lane, but they've both been being out by Pinero. He's going to jump in front of them and have a comfortable lead over these 2 drivers. I say comfortable lead, it's still going to be close between them, but Pinero, the driver who came into the pits running 5th at that point in time, he's going to be able to jump in front of both of them, so maybe that early decision to come down pit lane is going to help out Pinero a whole lot, so maybe that patient game that we saw in the early stages is actually going to work out for him when everything is said and done.
Well, look at this sheer gap that he's managed to pull away on Bobby West. James Walker absolutely nailing him. So in the pit time, Bobby West, 13 seconds. James Walker, on the other hand, 10.42. Massive difference. Marco Pinero, under 10 seconds. So I do wonder if we're going to have a few candidates here for the Thompson Trophy. As we look further up, Bradshaw, Kramer, and Favini still very much going at it. What about Simon Mayer, though? He's got ahead of Phil Berry for now. Kane Lasky's up the road, but himself and Jason Green, very much a two-car pack now. That lead battle with 5-6 cars involved. We're going to have to see how that develops, because I honestly wonder at this point, are these guys going to get caught by the undercut?
I'm curious if they will. I mean, they're still working together. You can actually see a little bit of damage on Lasky's car. Green coming down pit lane. He's breaking away from Lasky. That's not going to be good news to Lasky at all. So Green coming into the pit in the 160 car. He comes into pit lane from second. Mayer staying out for yet another lap. I'm curious, how's it going to shake out compared to Pinero? He's running in 10th as it stands at the moment. Kurt Nunez and Adam Bradshaw, the Masters drivers, come down pit lane, along with the Masters leader of Phil Berry. The Green stopped in his pit stall now. Let's see how things shake out for him. Let's see how it shakes out with Pinero. He's on the tri-oval now. I think he may end up blowing Jason Green's metaphorical doors off. Yes, he will. Pinero getting in front of Green, but I'm curious how Green is going to shake out compared to Walker. Those 2 drivers got to be very close on pit exit. Green, I think, nearly ran into the pit wall coming out of the corner, so that may have been a little bit of drama that Jason Green just had to befall. But Pinero pulling off a masterful strategy to be able to jump in front of everyone that has been challenging him thus far. Walker, Green, and West have already been jumped by Pinero. The next one in line seems to be Lasky. He's still out there on the track, running all by himself. He's getting no draft help at all. That is going to be a big upset for Lasky, who I gotta imagine has to come into the pits next time by.
Well, the biggest thing I'm seeing right now, Ron, is such a huge variation in these pit stop times. So Jason Green, he was in for 11.6. James Walker, 10.4. Pinero, under 10 seconds. That is such a huge variation. Bobby West, 13 seconds. Like, that is an absolutely massive variety of pit stop time. So I'm very, very curious as to how this race is going to develop. Kane Lasky, I'm not too sure right now. By logic, okay, he's going to spend the least time in the pits. He's going to have the lightest car, the most fuel burnt off. And there we go. That's him coming in there now. Actually, I'm not too sure on the track limits for this one, Ron. Is he allowed to cut that early? That's a Stevie Ray question, if ever there was one.
Ooh, that's a very good question. Gonna take a look in the iRacing information board if I can actually find it, if iRacing will let me find it, that is, to try and figure out how exactly they judge that sort of stuff. Remains to be determined. I think, I mean, if he's going to serve a slowdown penalty, you may as well do when you're coming down pit lane. I don't believe he's picked up a black flag as a result of that, so it looks like he's going to get away with one fairly scot-free. Is Kane Lasky, but at this point in time, he is going to be overtaken by Pinero well farther off in the distance. Walker going to get by him as well. I think Green may do it as well, so this is going to be a big change. Yeah, you can see it's going to be close with himself and Green.
Oh my gosh.
I think Lasky may be able to get, but he's going to be on cold tires. Green going to have a whole lot of speed heading down into turn number 4. This is a fight that I mentioned, side by side, heading down into the braking zone. Green going to try and get it done, but Lasky quicker on the brakes, and Green overshooting it. Green now may fall at risk of losing out of spots to Bobby West. So looking at that, Green overcooked it badly heading down into turn number 4. He's going to lose out on a little bit of time and may lose out on a second spot as Bobby West is right up his trumpet.
Well, as I have a quick look, Lasky was in the pits for about 10.9 seconds, so interesting to see. He's kind of in the middle pack. Pinero, I honestly don't think he's going to have enough fuel. Don't get me wrong, we saw how much he was fuel saving, so potentially, you know, he's just absolutely schooled the field on fuel saving, but we're going to have to find out. Certainly, if he's in a scenario where they have an extra lap, he'll be very quickly to suffer for that. But right now, in the race lead, fastest lap overall, absolutely dominating this race.
Yeah, this is looking pretty good at the moment. At this point in time, there's still a whole lot left to be decided. You can see that nearly coming to blows heading into the backstretch chicane. That was a disaster between those two. They've come to blows in the past in this series, so you never know. Things may happen between now and the end of this race. But looking at this front pack, though, I'm curious as to whether or not anyone's going to be able to catch up to Pinero. It's 2.3 seconds between Pinero in the lead and this man, James Walker, in second. Kane Lasky is a little bit farther in tow, about 2 seconds behind Walker. So I'm curious if anyone can even materialize any sort of pincer movement in a weird way to try and catch up to Pinero. I think Pinero may actually turn out to have this. He's not going to be enjoying the draft, though. Lasky hasn't been enjoying his life as of late, as looking like Green going to get a move done put on him. So Lasky dropping now down to 4th. I think the fight has now materialized between Green, Lasky, and West. Pinero, though, I think he's in a really good spot to win this race. I keep trying to pass it off to you here, Zippy.
Keep going, Ron. It's fine.
The fights in this race are still going on. That was Favini, Kramer, Bradshaw, and Nunez. Looking at Bradshaw and Nunez, that's a battle for the Masters win. They're side by side coming out of the corner. Actually, no, my apologies. That's Wood and Nunez. Bradshaw getting a move put on Nunez not terribly long ago to slip his way up into the lead in the Masters category. So Nunez was in a comfortable lead in the Masters class. However, things really haven't worked out too well for him throughout the final 30 minutes of this 40-minute long race. But in the final 8 that we're coming up to in just a couple of moments' time, looking like Bradshaw's in the catbird seat in the Masters category. However, he's going to have to try and get a move put on him by Trent Kramer, who's a very fast driver in the Spec Racer Fords. But Bradshaw really wants to get a move put on like that just because he wants to have a little bit of a cushion between himself and Nunez right behind.
Well, certainly, it's just, I saw the timing screen light up red for about 4 or 5 cars, and I'm like, whoa, we should take a look at that. But let's take a quick look here between Paulo Breme and Brad Cathcart. These guys are starting to get pretty close. The 555 machine had to do a little bit of evasive action earlier, and certainly keeping Brad Cathcart very honest at this point, the Italian driver versus the Australian, and certainly, you know, it's been a good battle for him so far. In terms of standings, you know, 4th for Brad right now, third for Paolo. So certainly, you know, they're in their own little battle right now. Flores is about 6 seconds behind him. So these guys really left to their own devices at this point.
Yeah, these drivers are kind of getting hung out to dry. Speaking of getting hung out to dry, Nunez getting a move put on Bradshaw to make his way back up into the final top 10 spots and the lead in the Masters category. But Bradshaw going to enjoy the draft throughout the rest of this flat-out blast down into turn number 1. Bradshaw looking to try and retake the lead in Masters. Nunez right behind. Daniel Wood as well with a little bit of damage on the 28 car. Looking to play spoiler as well, but side-by-side heading down into 1. Nunez little bit squirrely heading through. Touch the grass a teeny tiny bit, heading off down on the banking onto the back flat infield, whatever you want to call it. A lot of things coming out of my mouth that I was not expecting. Good lord. Nunez, though, in front of Bradshaw as it stands
Oh,
at the
Kramer!
moment. Daniel Wood looking to play spoilers, though.
Kramer, I just seen the back end of Kramer's car get very, very sideways just then, and Nunez was approaching. Not a lot he could do, and that's almost backed him up a little bit into the car of Adam Bradshaw. Kramer really having a little bit of a tough race today, not being able to capitalize. Still up 5 positions, but the hard charge right now for Vini, he's up 14 spots. He's cleared the rest of those guys. Lap traffic ahead of him, but right now the battle's going on is really for the Masters win right now. It's between Nunez, Bradshaw, and Daniel Wood kind of just getting involved in that battle. Tom Gradwell's a bit further back. He's out the running. But as we have a look at the lead as well, Pinero is absolutely, for lack of better words, running away. And Walker, West, Lasky, and Green. Currently Green falling back a little bit. I do wonder, maybe he's trying to save some fuel. Maybe he's going to save for a late charge at the end. As I see, Ryan Walker has also entered the pits a couple of times. So something going on with the Scottish driver over there. But this, I think, is going to be where the action is going to be at, ladies and gentlemen. You can see these guys potentially going 3 wide. Green's a smart guy. I think he's going to look at that battle and go, no.
Yep, can't blame him in the slightest. He wants no parts of the madness that's going to be going on right in front of him. Because if those drivers come to blows, he would be able to inherit P2 without any skin off his back. Lasky, West, and Walker battling hard. Green in tow as well. Is a perfect camera car to follow at this point in time. This fight is insane between all of these drivers. We got some fantastic battles up and down the grid. Pinero, though, he's still pulling away. You can just barely see him in some of the camera shots that we have with these drivers. Pinero, 4.5 seconds farther up the road. Nunez, though, still trying to hold on to the lead in the Masters category. Bradshaw tried it on him not terribly long ago. However, Trent Kramer is now in between those two. And look at Daniel Wood jumping in front of them. So as much as these drivers have been battling hard, that order that they're in right now is pretty much entirely flipped in the span of just 1 lap. Shows you how these Spec Racer Ford races can really be.
Oh, absolutely. Right now, any of these big battles, it is literally a roll the dice scenario, because certainly you could get one order going down one way, then as soon as they hit that bank section, it becomes a battle of the draft and who's got the good run. And often being at the back of that pack, you basically almost accumulate a load of drivers. Daniel Wood there, not quite getting a good entrance. Nunez right up the back of him. You see Kramer having a little bit of a wiggle as well, but right now, Kramer is in the middle of that Masters battle. Now, how hard is he going to fight? Realistically, he needs to get by Kurt Nunez, as that's lap traffic of Wayne Buttermore. Ooh, very tense moment there. And is that what Nunez needs? Because it literally, if Nunez gets ahead of Daniel Wood right now, he's going to open the gap between himself and Bradshaw.
Yeah, I think the lap traffic encounters may decide how a lot of these fights go up and down this grid. It may be a battle for the win. It may be a battle for the podium spots. It may be a battle just barely inside the top 10. But those lap cars and the lap traffic encounters, unless it's in this section of the racetrack coming out of the backstretch chicane off into turn number 1, it's tricky to try and get it done. Speaking of tricky, that's a tricky move from Nunez trying to go around the outside of Wood. I don't think that was entirely of his own fruition, though, as it looked like he got a little bit of a bootscoon boogie from Kramer to try and force his hand in getting that move done. That car looked a little bit sideways, so Kramer and look at Bradshaw coming in out of nowhere. Adam Bradshaw having a run of a lifetime and nearly coming to blows are the 2 drivers in the lead in the Masters category. Bradshaw leading it right now. Nunez alongside those 2 cars, separated by about 1/10 of a second. A couple of moments ago, they were separated by nothing. They made contact heading down into turn number 1. I am entirely convinced of it. Making contact is Kramer and Wood heading down into turn 4, trying to do a bump and run. Usually see that in a NASCAR race, not a Spec Racer Ford race, but these drivers may be getting a bit more experimental coming towards the end of this race, which is coming up in about 2.5 minutes time.
Well, at this point, I think Kramer is trying to push himself and Wood away from that Masters battle. So, realistically, there's a battle going on there for the lead of the Masters. Bradshaw currently holding the torch with Nunez right behind. Now, Nunez certainly, again, very happy with his result last week. Got that first podium win. And, Wan Chi Lin, good to see you here in the chat. How did Marco get 6 seconds clear? We can answer that one for you. His pit stop was absolutely insane. Sub 10 seconds. He's the only guy in the grid who did it. Bobby West was 13 seconds. And then a lot of the field, about half a second slower out in the pit box. So interested to see how it's going to work out. We did see him fuel saving the absolute stuffing out of that car earlier, but currently 6 seconds ahead. Bobby West, these guys are still heighting up, and oh my gosh, are we going to be going 3 wide?
Lasky Lasky, looking at Lasky. Whole lot of momentum on that outside line. It looks like he's going to be able to clear both Walker and West heading down into turn number 1 through the tri-oval for one of the final times in this race. The white flag is in the air. One more lap of racing action, I believe, here. This is going to be a fantastic fight all the way up until the checkered flag. 13 corners, but a whole lot of overtaking opportunities and a whole lot of opportunities to make some sort of mistake that could absolutely wreck your chances of doing well in this race. West running in third, Lasky in second, Walker and Green looking to break their way into those podium positions. Panero, meanwhile, he is absolutely dominant in this race. 6.5 seconds farther up the road. He's only made up one spot, had a rough start at the very beginning, dropped down to fourth. However, patience is such a huge factor in these races, and that's a reason why he's looking to try and grab a very dominant win here at Daytona. Bradshaw, meanwhile, he's on track for the win in the Masters category as Nunes has lost out on a boatload of time. What has happened to the driver of the number 918 car? What kind of Acme brand falling anvil has dropped on his head to ruin his chances at winning in the Masters category? He's lost out on a whole lot of time in the past few laps. Last time by was about 2 seconds slower than Bradshaw, which explains that 2-second gap between the two of them right now. Phil Berry, meanwhile, running in 7th, looking to inherit the Spec 2 win, but Panero were following him. The driver of the number 16 car has been dominant in this race. He's going to be heading through turn number 13, 3 and 4 on the tri-oval for the final time. Panero may not have had it easy at the very beginning of this race, but patience prevailed, and in the end, he's going to be running all by his lonesome and going to be able to take the victory. But my attention is on that fight behind them. West going to try and get a move done on Lasky. Lasky may be feeling some pressure here with Walker. Looks like Bobby West is going to inherit P2. Lasky going to finish maybe in third, but Walker gave him a hell of a fight towards the end. 0.026 of a second when everything is said and done between those two drivers. Simon Mayer finishes well further back in 6th. And there's Phil Berry. He's going to get a move put on him by Favini. Favini did not set a qualifying time, but Favini going to make up 15 spots to be the hard charger by far when everything is said and done from the Spec Racer Ford race here at Daytona. Adam Bradshaw ends up in 9th, getting some move done on Daniel Wood and Trent Kramer towards the end to not only grab the Masters win, but P9 overall. And man, that performance from Panero, dominant. There's no other way I can describe it. That, I think, is a champion's drive. There can be no doubt about it.
Well, it was definitely a very, very admirable effort, an incredible amount of fuel saving there. I am actually going to switch the camera, though, to one of our regulars here, and that's Mr. Jason Green. We didn't see him having any particular antics in the F1600 race, so I'm curious to see if Mr. Green can indeed find a takeoff ramp, so we'll keep an eye on that just in the background, ladies and gentlemen. But I got to say, Panero, fantastic drive and great battles throughout, very clean battles. I didn't see anything of particular alarm, and it looks like Jason Green not yet finding a launch pad for today. Oh, no, I say that. There's a few people parking up alongside. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get ready for... what camera do we want, Ron? This one looks good. Blimp cam.
Yeah, I think the blimp camera may be the best for this. Everybody, brace yourselves. Frankly, prepare to laugh your ears off. This has happened before in the Weekend Warriors world. Happened in Formula Fords. Happened in Formula Vs. It's going to happen here in Spec Racer Fords. Jason Green rolling, the rest of the drivers rolling as well. What sort of demons are they going to unleash onto us? They're heading through, going to carrying a whole lot of speed here on to the oval in a couple of moments' time. What are they trying? They're trying to jump in the grass, and look at that, they're barrel rolling. Oh my God,
look at Bobby West.
Holy Jesus H. Christ, these drivers suffering some hellacious collisions. Oh, damn. No. Oh, boy. Oh, no.
We can watch that
All right,
again.
we're going to ride on board with Jason Green. This is going to be a fantastic view. Where do they find this stuff? What? Okay, he just went up into that. Oh my God, look at those drivers getting, like, it has to be like 30 feet of air. This is insanity that we're seeing after this race. Oh, I think I snapped my jaw from laughing so hard. Oh boy, I mean, it takes a Advil when everything is said and done here. Holy Jesus, Lord above. These Weekend Warriors drivers, they always find some sort of. I was figuring here at Daytona, considering that most of Daytona International Speedway is about as flat as a pancake, I was thinking, where are they going to find a jump? How do they always find a jump? I mean, I'm not complaining one bit. Do not get me wrong, but holy dear, sweet baby, merciful Jesus. I am genuinely at a loss for words. We're just going to swiftly move on and get into the results. Marco Pinheiro wins when everything is said and done. Bobby West going to finish 7 seconds back in P2. The fight between Lasky and Walker came down to the wire, with those two cars separated by 0.02 of a second when everything is said and done after 40 minutes of racing action. Jason Green stealing our hearts with a jump attempt. He ends up finishing in 5th. Simon Mayer finishes a little bit farther back in 6th. Andre Favini, the hard charger in this race, ends up in 7th of 15 spots where he started a beautiful drive for the Swede behind the wheel of the number 27 car. Phil Berry ends up winning in the Spec 2 category in the 888 car. He ends up fittingly in 8th. Adam Bradshaw, the Masters driver, finishes right behind in 9th. Daniel Wood going to round at your top 10. Trent Kramer in 11th. Kurt Nunez in 12th after an unfortunate series of events towards the end of this race that ends up losing him what was set to be a dominant Masters win. He was leading throughout a decent chunk of this race. However, it doesn't really materialize when everything is said and done. Tom Gradwell finishes behind in 13th. Brad Cathcart finishes behind him in 14th. Andrew Love ends up in 15th. Joshua Flores ends up in P16. Jan Janšík ends up in 17th in his series debut. Paul Jackson ends up in P18. Looking through the rest of the drivers that we've classified here at Daytona, as I hope to try and get some feeling in my jaw after laughing so hard. Finishing this race in 19th is Paolo Brema. Ryan Walker finishes in 20th. Wayne Buttermore finishes in 21st. Jason Grider in 22nd. Alice Pleva, Joshua Wilkie, and Russell Telker did not take the start. And that rounds off the results. Not a whole lot of attrition throughout the 40 minutes of racing action, but the racing action was still incredible nevertheless. And Zippy, we got some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area. Who would you like to have a chat with first?
Well, I'll tell you what, Ron, you do the honors first, sir, and grab yourself Bobby West.
Alrighty, I will do that. Thank you very much. Bringing Bobby here into the commentary booth. And now, Mr. Bobby West, welcome back here to the commentary booth here at Slow Motion Broadcasting. Looked like a pretty scrappy drive from all of you drivers up and down the grid, especially in that hectic front pack fight. So talk us through the race here at Daytona.
Yeah, it was... Well, first of all, I'll say in my 140-odd starts in this league, that was my first pole position. So I'll take that for something anyway. Yeah, I miscalculated my fuel, actually. I thought it was going to be a 22-lap race, not 21. So I had too much, but I don't really think that would have made the difference with Marco. I mean, you can see he was sitting at the back there in the first bit, doing the sensible thing. Everyone was following me to begin with. James was the same, saving the fuel. So, yeah, I don't think I would have caught him anyway. But at least we got the group back together for the final lap.
Yeah, I mean, that fight towards the end was just absolutely hectic, and I would assume that you're talking about getting the pack together in terms of the final lap of the race and not some of the aerial acrobatics that we saw when everything is said and done. I'm going to take a whole lot of time to recover from some of that. Not sure if you saw that drama and chaos heading down back onto the back straight here when everything is said and done. Jason Green always ends up organizing that sort of stuff. He's a staple here in this series, and I feel like it feels a little bit off to mention this considering it happened 2 seasons ago, but I remember the last time that the Spec Racing Fords ran at this racetrack and I was on the air for that. You and Jason had a little bit of a scuffle heading through to finish that race. So the flat out blast towards the end of the races here at Daytona is just oh so important. And considering you were in the midst of that pandemonium towards the front of this field, I feel like you could definitely talk us through how important it is getting a good exit onto that back flat out blast.
Yeah, yeah, I got caught out really badly with that last lap draft scenario in the strength of field race on Thursday, and I came home 6th out of the group of 6. So I got kind of lucky that I had a bit of a poor chicane that left a big gap to Kane, and it just gave him no opportunity to come back by the start finish line. So woohoo, that worked out really well. But yeah, as for the jump, there's nothing even there. There's not even a thing to jump on. So Jason said he discovered that at some point. just driving around the perimeter of the track, and you just drive, and lo and behold, you get thrown up into the air. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, bizarre indeed, I can assure you that, but it was just, I mean, I am still trying to catch my breath. I feel like I was getting six-pack abs from laughing so hard after seeing that. I think we'll bring it back to earth here and kind of mention this season as a whole. We're officially halfway through this season now here for Season 4 of 2024, and the next time that we're going to be seeing this series is in 1 week's time at Road Atlanta. So how do you think that race is going to be in 1 week's time?
I think draft is, again, it's been a few years since I've driven that racetrack, to be honest, but we race it fairly regularly, and I think the draft is going to be a big deal again, especially onto the last lap. So, yeah, you can always like double back with that chicane. Survival again. It's a bit like today, just survive the first half. It's a bit like Daytona racing in general, isn't it? Survive until the end, and then just see where your cards fall.
Well, that is going to be a fantastic race in 1 week's time here from the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors, and I'm sure considering your performances in this series week in and week out, you're going to be a fixture of that race battle as well. So, Bobby, thank you for joining us in the commentary booth, and congratulations on the P2 result. Before we let you go and celebrate, is there anyone you would like to give a thanks to or shout out?
Just say thanks to you guys, doing a great job on the broadcast each week, so it's good fun to watch back.
Alrighty, thank you very much for the kind words there, Bobby. Well done on the P2 results, and excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season, man. Thanks for joining us.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Bobby West, and I have been able to catch up there with Phil Berry. Just going to get him dragged in here. Phil, now, it was certainly, I gave you a little bit of a hard time the other day saying, look, you're going to have to, get yourself a win just so you can come up and join us. And it looks like you've done exactly that. The Cookie Monster Motorsport machine, the Treble 8 car, making it onto the top step of S2.
I think I got lucky, mate, with Josh not showing up. But, yeah, it was nice to come back and have a good race. And my second competition in the 10.
Well, certainly, definitely a very challenging track today. It being the moto layout certainly wasn't one of the favorites with a lot of the drivers. But you know what? It's the same track for everybody, and it's good to see that you've managed to make it onto that top step. But we're heading to Road Atlanta next week. How do you feel about that Georgia track?
I actually quite enjoy Road Atlanta. It's another one of those ones that sort of flows for me. So hopefully I can have a good result there.
Oh, absolutely. And certainly, I find Road Atlanta, that's where we actually did the charity race recently. That was the 16th of October. We did that fundraiser for the Susan Komen Breast Cancer Foundation. And, I really enjoyed it, and it's certainly, you can actually get a little bit of air with the Spec Racer Fords at a couple of those corners. I'm sure you guys will be making it around that last turn, really hop in the car. But Phil, before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to thank for today's performance?
Just you guys for putting it out there for us. Without your support, we'd be just a bunch of guys enjoying some racing.
Well, thank you very much, Phil. It's good to see yourself and the Cookie Monster up on the podium. But before, I guess that pretty much wraps it up. I was going to say, I've asked you that already. Thank you very much, Phil, and congratulations on that S2 win. Well done, sir.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week.
Attaboy, that's the confidence we need right there. Wilkie, he's coming for you, buddy. He's coming for you. But ladies and gentlemen, that was Phil Berry. I'm just going to try and drag him out. There we go. I have been trying to round up a couple more people for an interview there, Ron, and it's fair to say, not had much luck.
Yeah, I think those are all the people that are going to be coming to have a chat with us. I feel like we need more like snacks and stuff here in the commentary booth just to bring some of these drivers in a little bit more. Some drinks, some snacks, maybe some cookies possibly. You never know.
I see what you did there.
Nevertheless, I feel like that may be you and Randall's job, considering y'all are usually on the call for the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors series. This series, though, usually puts on some fantastic racing, this one being absolutely no different. And speaking of the action that we just had, the action that we had earlier on, let's talk about the action that we have coming up here across Slow Motion Broadcasting and also Pit Road Productions here on SMB. Got some fantastic action. Next broadcast is going to be for the Ray Esports Club Racing League. That is going to be the first race of that brand new series. That is going to be a fantastic show with Mazda Miatas and TCR race cars running at Road Atlanta as well. So you can catch all that action here on SMB on Wednesday, October 30th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also got some action from the Weekend Warriors as per usual here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, kicking off the month of November with Formula V's running at Zandvoort, the Formula Fords running at Brands Hatch, the Spec Race for Fords running at Road Atlanta. We also have the action from the second round, Group 2 of the Ray Esports Club Racing League. The GT4s are going to be running at Sebring in about a week and a half's time. That gives you a reason to subscribe to SMB, but Daniel, we want to run through the action on Pit Road Productions?
Absolutely, Ron. So Pit Road Productions is the sister channel here to SMB, and if you want to see some guys absolutely fight it out tooth and nail for a chance at winning a real-life experience in a radical race car, well, you need to be on Pit Road Productions on Wednesday, the 30th of October, 8:30 Eastern, first round heading over to Sebring. There'll be a pro and amateur class in that series. The Formula Fords 1600 series, the BIS Formula Fords, that also has a sim to reality experience with a 3,000 iRating cap. Again, these guys fighting for a win. They're going to be heading to Alton Park, so that's going to be fun, especially if there is chicanes on that layout. Definitely a lot of fun. After that, you got Montreal, obviously Canadian track, Canadian series. That's going to be fantastic. Summit Point, well, we've already seen the sheer talent that Summit Point can deliver most recently in the Formula V's just yesterday, actually. And then we head to Donington Park for the Radicals. I appreciate that's a bit more of a spread out schedule, ladies and gentlemen, but something for you guys to keep an eye on as well. But Ron, any closing thoughts as we bring this broadcast to an end?
Well, I think some closing thoughts. Hopefully, Randall McGrew will be recovering. He's usually the gentleman that you hear on these broadcasts. He was feeling a little bit under the weather, so in a last-moment deal, I decided to step up and cover this show as well. But just the same sort of action that you always expect week in and week out in the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors. Some draft-heavy races, especially at a racetrack like this, with a decent chunk of the laps spent flat out. We got some racing action that we certainly expected. And again, just the normal action from the Weekend Warriors world. Spec Racer Fords no different. The Formula Fords are fantastic as well. The same can be said about the Formula V's on Saturdays as well. But this race was phenomenal. Some battling up and down the grid, running on an oddball track that not a whole lot of people have some experience at. Still gave us one hell of a race to talk about here on SMB. But I think for today's broadcast, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Maunz, and Daniel Zippy Salmon, working the comms and the cams with me on today's broadcast, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.
I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes.
That was the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
The field in Castro's hands, and he's going immediately. Gets a good jump there over green, and is pulling away. He is gapping early, even moving over to try to break up any sort of slipstream or help that inside line, making sure Green has his hands full coming into T1.
Your chance. Did Jason give Antonio just a little bit of a slow up? It doesn't look like it. Antonio down to the inside. Hopefully going to be able to make this move. Oh, that was close.
Soto both coming very hot with a head of steam. Plava going up to try to move out of the way and give up the slipstream.
Here comes Gilliland.
Slow down. Gilliland coming in, going to try to challenge for this podium. They're going to go too wide.
Oh, no!
No! Gilliland and Plava come together. Gilliland's going to come back across the line in 4th place.
Quite going to get there. There's a little bit of a lock up there
Oh,
from the
my
46
goodness.
car. He's gone deep.
Ooh, I don't know how everybody was able to get through that. That could have been absolute tears for that front runner.